Some people walk through life carrying entire worlds inside them, yet speak so little of what they feel. They smile, nod, and say they're fine, even when they're not. Their silence is not emptiness, it's protection. Their calm face hides storms they've learned to navigate alone. You might notice it in subtle ways. The way someone laughs a bit too quickly to change the subject. The quiet pause before they say it's okay. The softness in their eyes when everyone else is busy talking. There's something hauntingly beautiful and profoundly complex about those who hide their emotions. They carry both strength and sorrow in the same breath. But why do they do it? What happens inside the mind of someone who feels deeply, yet reveals so little? Hidden feelings are not just about secrecy, they're about survival. When someone conceals their emotions, it often means they've learned that vulnerability can be costly. Maybe they opened up once and were misunderstood. Maybe their pain made others uncomfortable. Maybe they grew up in an environment where emotional control was praised and sensitivity was dismissed. So they adapt. They build an inner world that's private, sacred, and safe. But beneath that calm surface, emotions still move, quietly shaping their thoughts, behaviors, and relationships. From a psychological perspective, suppression of emotion is not simply a lack of expression. It's a strategy, a subtle form of emotional regulation. Sometimes it's conscious, other times automatic. Over time, the person becomes fluent in silence, mastering the art of appearing composed, while their inner dialogue tells a different story. Understanding this behavior matters because hidden feelings often mask hidden needs, connection, safety, understanding. And until we recognize what's happening beneath that still surface, we risk mistaking restraint for peace, when in truth, it may be loneliness. Let's start with one of the most common psychological roots, emotional self-protection. For many, hiding feelings begins as a defense mechanism. Psychologists call this emotional inhibition, a coping strategy developed to avoid emotional pain. For instance, a child who learns that expressing sadness brings rejection or ridicule may begin to suppress it. Over the years, this becomes second nature. They grow into adults who equate silence with safety. On the outside, they appear calm, rational, even resilient. On the inside, emotions accumulate quietly, like water behind a dam. They analyze rather than express. They reflect instead of react. They learn to manage emotions internally, often mistaking emotional independence for emotional health. But here's the paradox. People who hide their feelings often have extraordinary emotional depth. They feel more than they can show. They notice details others overlook, the tone of a voice, the weight of a word, the energy in a room. Their empathy is heightened, but their self-expression is restrained. Consider someone who comforts everyone else but never asks for comfort themselves. They listen with full presence, offering warmth and understanding. Yet when it's their turn to speak, they retreat into quiet, not because they don't trust others, but because vulnerability feels foreign, unsafe, or undeserved. This emotional self-protection often intertwines with perfectionism or hyper-independence. Psychologists note that people who hide feelings sometimes carry an unspoken belief. If I stay composed, I stay in control. Control becomes a shield against rejection. And when emotional exposure feels like weakness, control feels like strength. However, this habit can have subtle costs. Suppressing emotions doesn't make them disappear. It redirects them. Over time, it can lead to emotional fatigue, difficulty forming deep connections, or even physical tension. The body remembers what the mind tries to silence. Studies have shown that long-term emotional suppression is linked to increased stress and reduced emotional well-being. But the story isn't all sorrow. There's also quiet courage and emotional restraint. People who keep their feelings hidden often do so not out of fear, but out of love. They don't want to burden others. They prioritize peace over confrontation, understanding over being understood. Their silence becomes a gift to the world, even when it costs them personally. Imagine a parent who holds back tears so their child feels safe. A friend who hides their pain so others can celebrate freely. a partner who swallows frustration to keep harmony intact. These moments reveal something profound. The ability to hide emotions often comes from the same place that love does, a deep care for others. So, while society sometimes labels emotional restraint as cold or unfeeling, the truth is often the opposite. It's warmth, wrapped in discipline, compassion, expressed through control, a quiet kind of bravery. And yet, the longer someone hides their emotions, the more distant they can feel from themselves. Because emotion isn't meant to be imprisoned, it's meant to move. And when it can't, it turns inward, whispering in the language of exhaustion, restlessness, or quiet sadness. People who keep their feelings hidden live in delicate balance between strength and vulnerability, calm and chaos. Their silence can be both a refuge and a burden. To understand them is to look beyond what's visible, to recognize that behind every quiet smile might be a story untold, a fear unspoken, a heart still learning how to be seen. We'll explore how these hidden emotions shape relationships, trust, and identity, and how emotional honesty, when it finally emerges, can become one of the most powerful forms of healing. But let this thought linger. Sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest truths. They just speak them differently. There's a quiet art to emotional hiding, one that evolves over time. What begins as protection can transform into identity. Some people don't just hide their feelings. They become the kind of person who no longer knows how to show them. Psychologists often describe this as emotional masking, the subtle act of adjusting one's outward expression to match what's socially acceptable rather than what's inwardly true. It's not deceit, it's adaptation. In crowded rooms, they smile because that's what's expected. In moments of grief, they nod and say, "I'll be okay." And they mean it, not because they feel no pain, but because they've learned to manage it privately. For them, emotions are like sacred pages, not for public reading. But there's another layer. Behind a mask often lies fear of misinterpretation. People who keep their feelings hidden may have experienced moments where their emotions were dismissed, twisted, or used against them. So they retreat inward, not from others, but from the risk of being misunderstood. In a world that rewards emotional transparency, they often feel out of place. Yet their silence is an emotional absence. It's precision. They express only what feels safe, and with whom they truly trust. Interestingly, this restraint often coexists with heightened emotional intelligence. They can read others with uncanny accuracy, sensing discomfort before a word is spoken. Their empathy runs deep, yet it's turned outward, protecting others while neglecting themselves. Some psychologists link this to avoidant attachment patterns. When early experiences taught someone that closeness can hurt, distance feels safer. They crave connection but fear exposure. They long to be seen but dread being fully known. And so, they exist in emotional paradox. Open-hearted, yet guarded. Compassionate, yet cautious. Capable of love, yet terrified of what love demands, vulnerability. These people don't explode in anger. They implode in silence. They don't ask for reassurance. They offer to everyone else. They're often the emotional anchors of their families or friend groups, calm, steady, dependable. But when they're alone, they can feel invisible even to themselves. Over time, suppression can blur the boundaries between feeling and functioning. They may know they're tired, but not why. Sad, but unable to cry. Numb, but still smiling. Emotional hiding becomes muscle memory, and unlearning it takes immense courage. There's something profoundly human about the desire to protect one's heart, to keep certain feelings sacred, too raw, too precious to expose to a world that might not understand them. But the truth is, what we hide shapes us. Unspoken emotions don't vanish. They echo. They live in our tone when we say, "I'm fine." They live in the tightness of our shoulders, the hesitation in our voice, the nights we feel restless without knowing why. People who keep their feelings hidden often carry an extraordinary level of self-awareness. They spent years analyzing their own emotions, predicting outcomes, minimizing conflict. They become emotional strategists, skilled at maintaining harmony. Yet, beneath that composure lies an unfulfilled longing, the wish to be known without having to explain. To be understood not because they revealed everything, but because someone cared enough to see what wasn't said. There's also resilience in this kind of silence. It's not always a flaw. Sometimes it's a form of grace, the ability to stay grounded in chaos, the choice to pause before reacting, the strength to feel deeply without losing control. Still, there's a hidden cost. The longer feelings remain unspoken, the more they harden into distance. The person begins to believe their emotions are too heavy, too complicated to share. And so they shrink themselves, speaking in logic instead of feeling, comfort instead of honesty. But healing doesn't mean breaking the silence all at once. It begins with moments, small, brave ones, saying, "Actually, I'm not okay." Allowing tears to come without apology. Letting someone see the unfiltered version, the one that doesn't have to smile. The truth is, the people who keep their feelings hidden are not weak. They are survivors of emotional misunderstanding. They are people who once felt too much, too soon, and decided the safest thing was to feel quietly. And yet, somewhere deep down, they still hope to be met, softly, patiently, without demand. If you've ever kept your feelings hidden, not because you wanted to, but because you had it, this isn't a story about brokenness. It's a story about strength. It takes immense control to hold emotions without letting them consume you. But it also takes courage to begin unlearning that control, to let the walls down piece by piece, and trust that your emotions deserve to exist in the open. Maybe that's the quiet message behind this entire psychology. Hiding feelings doesn't make you cold. It means you've cared deeply and learned to protect that care. But growth comes when protection turns into permission. When you allow yourself to feel, to speak, to be seen again. So here's a gentle reflection. Are you the one who hides your feelings? Or are you the one who needs to look closer, to notice the quiet people who do? Whichever you are, let this stay with you. Everyone you meet carries an unseen world within them. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do is make that world feel safe to be known. If this helped you understand yourself or someone you love a little more deeply, consider subscribing. There's more to explore about the hidden layers of the human mind and the quiet stories it tells when no one's listening. Because beneath every silence, there's truth. And beneath every guarded heart, there's a story waiting to be understood.